start it. Okay, let's start the TXT meeting.
Let's start it?
Yep.
Okay. Great.
I'll just start, we're going to restart this week's TXT meeting. So in this session, I guess Palash will talk about the proposal about improving the Netconf SaaS down, which is titled Netconf Proxy Session. So we can go ahead and give us the proposal information.
Great. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Palash and I'm working at Samsung Electronics. So today, the topic is Netconf Proxy Session. And the problem that I faced in the current master branch was this. Can everyone hear me?
At least Menlo can hear. If anyone else has issue.
Yeah, you can mention it on the chat maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I try to access Netconf sessions from ONOS application or CLI or drivers from a non-master controller, then the app cannot make read-write calls to the device because currently in master branch of ONOS code, only one controller has the session, and other controllers disconnect from the session. You can see it here. So when a role change is event occurs, only the master will initiate the connection. All other will disconnect. Can you see this?
Yes.
The screen in GitHub, on GitHub. So this was made because Netconf sessions are relatively expensive, and if we have all the controllers having sessions, then it becomes slow in replying. And also because of synchronization conflicts, we cannot have multiple sessions because managing of equivalent of roles is not yet implemented in ONOS. So the patch which I submitted at first was to initiate connections on all the controllers, but this is not exactly correct because it gives the problems which I mentioned. So the purpose is to have all the controllers access the session in some way. So what my proposal is to have a Netconf proxy session, which all the controllers will have, all the devices, Netconf devices, and only one of the controllers will have the actual Netconf Mina implementation session. Are you able to follow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like it should be similar to this. In device manager currently we have a call called change port state. Yeah. So change port state, if it is not a master node, then it will call change port state at the master node, like this, using the communication service. So I'm planning to do the same for Netconf session calls, a similar thing. So in Netconf controller implementation, whenever a new device is connected, a Netconf device instance is created. And currently, we have only one session object, which is called Netconf session Mina implementation. So I'm proposing to add another session object called Netconf session proxy implementation. And how the calls will go is this. If there is a call from CLI or app or driver for a session method call, the first call will be sent to the proxy implementation session. And then it will call a method at netconf controller which says execute at master. So if this node is not a master node, if it's a standby node, then it will send and receive using cluster communication from the master node. The master node will call the actual implementation, and then return value will be sent across to the standby node. And this is the method call flow. A standby node, we will encode the message and will call executed master in the netconf controller service. This will in turn have a east-west communication and call the message handler in another controller's netconf controller, decode the message to actual call the actual implementation, that is Mina implementation, the latest one, and then return back the values.
Question, what do you mean by encode to message?
So finally, for east-west communication, we would need a single message to be sent to the other controller.
So you're simply saying the XML message that need to be wrapped into whatever that communication service provides. So effectively serializing to bytes.
Yeah, finally to bytes using the serializers. So because the information has too many things, for example, the device ID, the actual message, the message ID. So all this needs to be combined into one message format. And netconf session utils will be a new class which will be added. It will do the work of encoding and decoding the messages received.
So effectively adding the envelopes.
I could not hear you, sorry.
I get it. So you're wrapping the actual RPC message with the envelope information, which device it is. Well,
yeah. Which device, what message ID, all will be wrapped and then sent to the netconf controller. So this will be a new class which will be added, which will be, the purpose will be to encode the message and then finally on the other master node decode message to the actual call. So netconf session proxy implementation will also implement netconf session, but it will not have direct calls to the device. It will go through this flow. Now, if the current node is master node, then what we will do is again the call will go to the netconf session proxy implementation. It will call execute at master and directly call the actual implementation on the same controller if it is a master. And it will be this again, encode to message, execute at master, decode, and actual implementation on the same controller. So this yeah.
I was kind of wondering, so in this scenario, I was wondering why you need to go through the encode step.
Because the master node in netconf session proxy implementation, it's not a service, so it does not have the checking to check if it's a master or not. It will be a default class where all the calls will be made, and then the message will be sent to netconf controller implementation saying now you execute it at master. Netconf controller implementation will check if I am the master, then execute on the same controller. If I'm not the master, then send it to other controllers. Here there is a wastage of encoding and decoding, but I could not think of a direct way to have this. to keep it generalized at the top, northbound side. This was the way I could think of.
Let's see. I guess it sort of depends on how Netconf session proxy import instance is retrieved by application. Today, all those Netconf session instances handled by Netconf controller, which is an OCGI service, so that entity has access to all the OCGI services. So if it is technically, if the lifecycle of the net concession proxy is similar to that of actual net concession import, then it should be possible to pass the reference to those mastership service and whatnot to net concession proxy import itself, so that if it can test on its own whether I am the master or not, and if I am the master, directly pass through to the Mina session, the actual implementation should be possible, don't you think?
So you're mentioning that we pass a reference of netconf controller implementation because it has all the access to all the service OSGI services.
Let me break down my question into two parts. So, how will netconf session proxy import instance created? Will it be asking netconf controller to give me a netconf session instance about this device ID? And the netconf controller will give me back the instance of, which happens to be netconf session proxy import. Is that the kind of use case you're thinking, or are you thinking that? Go ahead.
So the first creation will happen in. Can you see the GitHub document? This is the netconf default netconf device. Right now, it has one session, the private netconf session, and this implementation is actually Mina. Okay, sorry. So this method call will actually create a Mina session, right? When a new default netconf device is created, this will create a Mina session by default. And what I'm planning to do is have here another session. The default netconf session will be proxy implementation, and plus there'll be another session. It will be Mina implementation. That will be called maybe netconf Mina session or netconf real session. So when a new default netconf device is created, it will create two sessions. And we can pass the reference of netconf controller implementation or netconf controller. I'm not sure if netconf controller implementation can be passed as a reference. There are some reverse dependency.
So
This so the calls here are not expensive as far as I think. They are just converting it to one list, or so if there are three things we want to send, maybe device ID, message, and message ID. So what encoding will do is convert that into a list and then call it master, and this decoding will break down the list and again call the actual implementation with the variables or arguments.
See. Yeah, I think there's room for improvement, but yeah, let's move on. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So my proposal is this much, that I'll create two sessions for one device. One will be proxy session. One will be actual implementation, and the proxy session will be accessed by all the controllers. And then finally, when the actual call needs to be made, it will be made on the master controller. And through the MENA session implementation. So this is my proposal. So are there any other questions or comments?
Okay, so let's see. So, so I think that, well, it's a minor one, but there's some model of operation that there is no master for that device at that moment. There's a scenario will be in what will happen in that case?
If there is no master, then actually the Netconf controller implementation will check for if there is a master or not, and appropriate errors will be sent. So the actual checking happens here. So Netconf controller impl will check if there is a master. If there isn't a master, then it will return back the error appropriately here.
So it's going to get a failed future or something like that.
Yeah. So everything is implemented in future calls. All from here, the calls will be future calls till here, and then the return value is sent to CLI.
Yeah, I think this in general makes good sense. There are actually a few challenges to proxying some masters in general. One of them was that there may be no master, but also by the time a message arrives on the master, it may no longer be the master, or it's also actually possible for two nodes to believe themselves to be the master at the same time. And you can get into, or believe another node to be, or believe different nodes to be masters at the same time because of the consistency model that's used in the mastership election. So you can get a case actually where node A proxies a message to node B thinking it's the master, and node B thinks node A is the master, and you can get recursion between nodes. So you have to be careful.
There won't be a recurrent calls here, as you're mentioning, because the handlers and actual method calls are different. So when this makes a call to Netconf controller here, it does not check again that if I am the master or not.
Okay, so
there will be handlers which will handle the call, and it will call the actual implementation. If there is no session, it will return error, right? Because it's not a master. What I'm saying is there will be errors, but there will not be recurrent calls.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any other opinions? For this also there is some waste of calls, but I could not think of any other way.
Yeah, I think it's really fine. As Jordan mentioned, so as long as you're issuing RPC, Netconf RPC like get or get config, I mean, this is completely fine. But once we start dealing with edit config type of thing, getting out of order could potentially be a problem. So that's something we need to solve in the future. But in general, I think this will make, I mean, fetching configuration for any node and so on much easier. So I think this proposal sounds good to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a problem we see with code, with a lot of areas of the code base in ONOS where a lot of stuff is proxied to masters, and the problem is that different nodes can have different views of the cluster state at the same time. But I think that's a problem in general in a lot of areas of the code base that we probably have to solve later.
I mean, for me, I considered everything related to cluster as a black box, and I'm expecting it to behave. But if it does not behave accordingly, then appropriate errors should be sent back.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fine for this.
So if there aren't any other questions or comments, then my side can end here. Any other opinions or questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So then I'll start implementation from maybe next week or something, and
Sounds good.
we'll keep you updated.
Yeah. Once we have the patch in Garrett, add us to review, then we'll take a look.
Okay, yeah, great. So I'll add you, Jordan, and Yuta. You are already there. Okay.
Okay.
It's good. So now, if I'll make you the presenter, ONF large conference room.
Oh, it's not like we have anything more to.
Okay, yeah, if you don't have anything else, then yeah, we can end it here.
Unless Jordan has something you want to discuss about, I think we can close the TST session. Do you have anything? Okay. I guess we can close this thing. Thank you, Palash, and we'll be waiting for your patch to merge and so on. Thank you for your contribution.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.